I swear, to this day, I still wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I hear that woman tapping on the glass. It was about 3 years ago in the fall. I just wrapped up a massive project at work, and my stress levels were through the roof. A friend suggested I rent a remote lake cabin in Maine, saying the lack of cell service would be exactly what I needed to completely unplug. The cabin was in a place called Wolf Creek Lake, surrounded by nothing but trees and water. The nearest town was an hour's drive away. For the first few days, life was incredibly peaceful. I spent my mornings fishing by the lake, and my evenings curled up by the fireplace with a good book. At night, apart from the rustling of pine trees in the wind, it was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I liked to leave the curtains open before bed, so I could wake up to the sight of the morning mist over the lake. On the third night, around midnight, I was jolted awake by a strange tapping sound. It was faint, like someone gently knocking on glass with their knuckles. My heart skipped a beat, but then I rationalized it, thinking it must be a tree branch scraping against the window. I got up, walked to the window, and peered outside. There was nothing but the inky blackness of the lake and the swaying silhouettes of trees in the wind. I told myself I was being paranoid and got back into bed, forcing myself to fall back asleep. The next night, the sound returned, clearer and more insistent this time, right on my bedroom window. I shot upright in bed, now certain it wasn't the wind. It was a rhythmic tapping. I immediately grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, pointing it towards the window. The beam cut through the night, hit the lake, and reflected back. And then I saw it, a blurred figure standing outside my window, directly facing it. It was very thin and incredibly tall, almost as tall as my second-story cabin. My heart pounded as I scrambled to pull the curtains shut. I rushed downstairs, fumbling for my phone to call 911, but the screen stubbornly displayed no service. I checked every door and window, making sure they were all securely locked. Then I heard a faint click from upstairs, like a window being pushed open. I raced back up and found my bedroom window indeed slightly ajar. From outside, a low, wet whisper, almost like a sob, drifted in. Panic surged through me, and I slammed the window shut with all my might, locking it. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The cabin's isolation had transformed into extreme terror. I huddled in a corner of the living room, clutching a boning knife I'd grabbed from the kitchen. About an hour later, a soft knock echoed from the living room door. It was faint but unnervingly clear, accompanied by a strange scraping sound, as if someone was pressing their face against the wood, rubbing it slowly back and forth. I held my breath, peering through the peephole. Nothing was visible outside but the night's darkness, yet the scraping and knocking continued. I could even feel the door panel vibrating subtly. The sounds abruptly stopped. Just as I thought the crisis was over, a thin trickle of dark red liquid slowly began to seep out from under the bottom of the living room door. It had a faint, metallic smell. The liquid spread, gradually forming a strange, almost grotesque shape, like an outstretched hand. I recoiled, stifling a scream. Then from outside the door, I heard a low, heavy sigh, followed by the sound of something large and heavy collapsing. I don't know how I survived that night. It wasn't until dawn, when I saw the first hint of light through the window, that I dared to crawl off the floor. Trembling, I unlatched the door. There was nothing there, only a patch of dark red stain, now dry, on the ground where the liquid had been. It looked like a large, dried bloodstain. I stumbled to my car, shaking, and sped away from Wolf Creek Lake, not daring to look back. I never called the police. What would I even tell them? I was safe, but I knew I'd never forget that tall, thin figure at the window and the chilling stain outside my door. Some places, you know you shouldn't go, but you go anyway for the sake of survival, and then you're never the same. This happened about 2 years ago. I just graduated college and was really struggling to find a job, so money was tight. I stumbled upon a night shift security guard position online, watching over an abandoned library. It was on the outskirts of the city, and the old building was supposedly over 100 years old, derelict and abandoned by the city council. The job was simple: Just sit there from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., making sure no one broke in. The pay was surprisingly good, so I didn't think twice before taking it. The library's interior was pitch black, with only a few dim emergency lights illuminating the entrance. Each night, I'd bring a flashlight, a thermos of hot water, and a few novels. Most of the time, I'd just sit in the security booth in the main hall reading. Occasionally, I'd get up and do a quick patrol to check if any windows had been tampered with. Aside from the occasional scuttling of rats and the mournful whine of wind through broken windows, the entire night was incredibly quiet. About my third night on the job, while patrolling the second floor, I caught a strange smell. It wasn't mold or dust. It was a sickly, sweet, earthy smell mixed with something rotting, like damp soil and decaying plants. It was very faint, a fleeting scent that I initially dismissed as my imagination or perhaps some small animal that had gotten inside. I swept my flashlight beam across the surrounding bookshelves but found nothing. A few days later, the smell returned, stronger this time, and it seemed to be coming from deeper within the library. A wave of nausea hit me, but I pushed through it, following the scent. My flashlight beam danced through the aisles of bookshelves, and then I saw them. A trail of blurry, damp footprints on the floor, leading out from a dark corner. The prints were odd, not quite human, more like something heavy had been dragged along. I stopped, my heart pounding, a growing sense of unease washing over me. I quickly backed away, retreated to the security booth, and tried calling my supervisor, but his phone went straight to voicemail. The following night, I started hearing a strange sound. It wasn't the scurrying of rats, nor the sighing of the wind. It was a soft sound, like someone whispering to themselves, or perhaps some animal softly grunting. It was intermittent, elusive, sometimes upstairs, sometimes seemingly downstairs. I was too scared to leave the security booth, so I just stared intently at the surveillance monitors, but all I saw was static and blurry, indistinct images. I switched my phone to recording mode, hoping to capture something. Around midnight, the sound suddenly ceased. I exhaled, thinking I'd finally made it through. But then a large, indistinct shadow suddenly appeared on the glass door of the security booth. The shadow was immense, almost completely obscuring the door. It stood motionless, as if silently watching me from just outside. I froze, unable to breathe. Just as I thought it was about to burst in, it slowly began to recede, disappearing into the darkness. I rushed to the door, peering through the glass, but the outside was empty, nothing there. I played back my phone's recording. Besides my own heartbeats and breathing, I could clearly hear the faint whispers and grunts. But what was even clearer, after the shadow disappeared, was a loud, drawn-out creak, like rusty hinges turning, followed by a heavy, dragging, shuffling sound on the floor. The sound grew fainter and fainter, until it completely vanished. I realized the sound was coming from a section of the library that was usually locked off, deep within the building. I don't know how I lasted until dawn. When I saw the first rays of morning light pierce through the windows, I practically stumbled out of the library. I never went back to that job, and I never called the police. I deleted the audio file from that night, but the faint, sickly sweet smell and the silhouette of that massive shadow were burned into my memory. To this day, whenever I catch a whiff of that strange scent, I instinctively look over my shoulder, always feeling as though something is still out there, dragging itself through the darkness.